I couldn't wait. I gotta do chapter 3. Okay, welcome back to The Gospel According to Superman by John T. Galloway Jr., 1973. I'm gonna read the whole book. It might take me a minute, but I had to get to chapter 3. God Comparisons. There's lots of mosquitoes. I don't know if I can handle this. A nagging question crops up at this point. If Superman is really a figment of human imaginings, a symbol of what people fantasize is coping with life, is there not a chilling piece of bad news for us when Superman is portrayed so much like God? Memories of those living room discussion groups from high school and college days flash back. If someone isn't pestering the leader with questions about the people in Africa who have not heard of Jesus, will they get into heaven? Someone else is insisting that God is being cooked up by adults to help them preserve order and face death. Have we not torpedoed all this faith business when we can show that God is really a spiritual model of a comic book character? Haven't we proved God is just another dreamed-up hero? Not really, but the comparison is nonetheless worth pursuing. Every year, Esquire magazine, in a hilarious section, makes awards for oddities that occurred during the previous year. We read of such outstanding misfortunes as the hunter who accidentally shot himself in the leg. Being alone, he knew that he had to summon help. He fired another shot, hoping to catch someone's attention, and in doing so, shot himself in the other leg. An award-winning performance. A preacher found himself so honored a few years back, he won a spot in the pages of Esquire for preaching a sermon in which he said that God is a lot like Superman, swooping down from the heavens to straighten things out in human life and then up, up, and away, ascending again to the great beyond. Call the award what you will, the preacher was at least right about one thing. Without wanting to take Superman too seriously, one can find an extraordinarily high number of points of comparison between the Superman of the comics and the God revealed in Scripture and in the person of Jesus Christ. On the surface of it, the comparison seems almost complete. Fighting a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way, the purposes of the Man of Steel and of God appear the same. Both intervene in time of trouble. Rather than being able to walk on water, change water into wine, or pass through locked doors, Superman is described as faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. He is, indeed, a strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. He is the power from beyond the midst of Metropolis, the characteristic that must send chills up and down the spines of theologians who so passionately describe Christ as the beyond in our midst, and their comrades who insist God lives in the city. Even a dash of old-time Calvinism can be thrown in. Superman has his chosen elect, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and Perry White. After reading only one episode, it is quite clear that all things work together for the good of those who love Superman and who are called according to his purpose. And why not? He can change the course of mighty rivers and would have little trouble separating the waters of the Red Sea. He can bend steel in his bare hands and would find it in a cinch to break open jail doors when New Testament writers were held captive. When the editors of Esquire cited the preacher's sermon, they said that it sounded odd, but they were not denying that the good Domini had a point. Domini? What are we talking about in this chapter is God comparison. It is a topic that can have a very odd feel, as comparison runs the gamut from illumination to blasphemy. The shades of gray that lie between often leave us quite uncanny. Perhaps the preceding paragraph in a case in point. The Superman-God parallel is, in many ways, making a revelation, yet it is blasphemous in much of its tone. Since this book is really an exercise in God's comparison, a bit of clarification of the subject might be helpful. There are 4 models for making God comparison. In the first, we have a fairly vivid picture of who God is and what he is about. But we need some way to get this great truth across to our audience. Often we simply have so much awareness of God's fullness and presence that words alone fail to do justice. Just as a picture is worth 1,000 words, so is the verbal image. Jesus was a master at his technique in pointing many verbal images in the form of parables that he told the crowds. God is like a shepherd searching for the lost sheep. God is like a father waiting for his prodigal son to return. Using the same strategy for God comparisons is the best style of Jesus. The preacher uses it in prayerfully searching for the right illustration to help his congregation see the truth that will set them free. Robert Short used the comic strip Peanuts to bring the gospel message to millions. The Spirit of the living God is at work in comparisons of this sort. In our second model, we see how important it is to have already made a decision about who the Lord of life really is. Comparison borders on blasphemy when God is not the truth to be told, the Lord before whom to bow. In this model, something less than God is elevated by cloaking it in the likeness of our God. There's a little diagram, but it's backwards. So here we go. That's the models there. I can dash of old-time Calvinism no, that's not right. What happened here? It says, I can make something I can make something or someone look better if I use godly qualities in the description. Just finishing it. It is done often. One glaring example to take here from the field of political writing, where candidates are frequently put on donkeys and pointed towards Bethlehem. In 1959, Earl Mazzo penned these lines about Richard Nixon. Nixon has managed to stand out in one way or another for the good part of his life. He was the first child born to Yorba Linda, a farming village 30 miles inland from Los Angeles. Next day, there was a partial eclipse of the sun. Nixon's father, whose wide-ranging talents included carpentry, built the family homestead alone except for the fireplace. A novel birth in the rustic pastoral setting, son of a carpenter, born at a time when celestial phenomena were occurring, one might have expected to find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Such comparisons would seem to be using God to make some other point. The third model is happily common to our culture. Here a story is to be told, not necessarily intending to make any religious statement or to elevate any particular point of view, almost by accident a message. God and comparison in union. From God comes in. Charles Dickens writes A Christmas Carol. On Sesame Street, the characters all line up to march, and one insists upon being in the front, only to be frustrated when the march begins with an about-face order, and he finds himself last. We recall Jesus' words, the first shall be last. The message of the Judeo-Christian tradition is so deeply ingrained in Western culture that it almost naturally sprouts up here and there in our creative expression. The thoughts of Scripture come alive in a secular setting, and the two become one. The fourth model is one in which the message of God is simply not understood. When one thinks of God, one is really thinking not of God at all, but of popular religion. There are a number of ways this model could be set up. For our purposes, only one is included. The real message of God is cut off, and instead the fascination is with the comparison between some character or object and the good God of pop religion. I'm about to run out of time, but here's the little diagrams here, and I'll continue in the next one.